This is an example of best is last. So I'm talking about designing for humans. We've done research in 7 countries, mostly in emerging markets, and I wanted to share some of the insights that we've had with all of you, with the hope that as you're going into building this weekend, it might inspire some new ideas and empathy and give some new perspectives. So globally, about 1 in 3 adults don't have access to a bank account, and because of this, they don't have an easy way to send money across distances, to store value, or participate in kind of the global financial infrastructure that we're building and that exists around the world. Celo, which most of you may not have heard of, is an open platform that makes financial tools accessible to anybody with a mobile phone. And if you remember one thing about Celo, it's mobile first, so we've designed the whole system to be focused on the mobile use case. To give you a quick preview of the technology, there are 3 layers. On the bottom, we are fully EVM compatible, and so we're a fork of Ethereum with certain features built for mobile, again. And then in the middle, we have our own stablecoin called Celo Dollars and Celo Gold. And then we have a lightweight identity protocol as well that maps phone numbers to hashes on the protocol. And then on the top, we're building the first use case, which is a peer-to-peer social payments app focused on emerging markets. And because we're designing the whole stack end-to-end, we actually get insights from the research that we're doing and the testing and the piloting, and then we build those features into the protocol. So we're very quickly iterating on this mobile use case with the hope that it can be more usable and delightful for users around the world. And how we do this, which is my background, is through design research. Has anyone heard of design research or familiar with the practice? So a handful of people. So the big thing here is that we're designing with communities around the world using this new approach. And I'll give you an example. So earlier this week, I was drinking a lot of coffee. So that was what I was doing. How I was doing it, I was buying it with my credit card because I hadn't got euros yet. But why I was doing that is because I'm extremely jet lagged coming from California. So if you might look at my behavior, you might say, okay, what is she doing? She's buying coffee. I'm going to design a coffee app that's better than the current one. But my actual need is around jet lag. So the solution you may design might actually be around a better sleep system for the airplane, and then maybe some medicine for me to take to sleep better. So once you understand my kind of core need, you can design a solution that's rooted in that versus kind of just what you're seeing or observing. And so this is an approach that we take for every new kind of country or market that we're looking at. We love research so much that we actually took our entire company to Colombia, and we did research with Venezuelan migrants. And so we were studying people who were banked in Venezuela and now unbanked in Colombia, and then also the formal and informal remittances infrastructure between the 2 countries. And in total, in the last year and a half, we've been to 18 cities in 7 countries. 39 of our team members have participated. Over 150 one-on-one interviews, which last 1 to 2 hours each, and 6 different methods. So there's a whole toolkit of resources that you can use. And then we've, in total, had around 90 insights that informed this kind of ecosystem that we're building today. And we've actually shared all of our insights on Medium on our blog. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about what we learned. And since I imagine most of you are interested in dApps, because this is DappCon, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about crypto adoption along a journey and kind of look at the different steps. And the first market that we went to was actually M-Pesa in Kenya, which is kind of the case study for mobile money and adoption. 86% of the population uses M-Pesa in Kenya. And so this is kind of the trend that we've seen in Kenya and on other markets as well. So it really starts with awareness. How do people hear about it? Does it kind of resonate? And then do they understand it? With blockchain, as you can imagine, there's a lot of barriers to that. Can they actually trust it? Do they know the people behind it? Does it add value, and can it very quickly add value to the situations that they're in? And then if you can kind of unlock all of these things, then you can get to a state of love over time. So first, awareness. So this was in Kenya. I have not put into my head to know what Facebook is for. And so from Facebook, we also asked a lot about cryptocurrencies and all sorts of tech adoption. And in general, people, and especially in emerging markets, don't really think about concepts in the same way that we might be at a conference thinking about the future, even if they're familiar with the term. So this woman we met actually had Facebook pre-installed on her phone, and she'd never opened it. She was like, I have not spent the mental energy trying to understand it. And this was drastically different than when M-Pesa was introduced in that same market, where they said send and receive money in the air. Where the current mental model for that was sending money to a person and they take the envelope in a bus and then deliver it to their family. And so it was a model that they already had. So it was like, send money like you do right now, but now you'll send it in the air. And then people saw the TV ads and immediately signed up, like no delay. And so the big takeaway here is like people won't pay attention unless you speak to their need, which may be obvious, but you have to actually understand what their need is, which research and asking questions is a great way to do that. And some things we've been testing is actually different messaging, looking, basically running ads and seeing what people click on just to kind of see what the message resonate in different audiences. And another thing around awareness is really common to do community-based education, and so people kind of go into these communities and run these like circle sessions where people kind of share and learn together, and that's like a really big way to get awareness in a new market as well. So once you kind of get awareness, now is like, well, what are you talking about? Do I even understand what this thing is? And so in Argentina, we heard, I don't work with dollars. And this is actually feedback from our app. And many people in Argentina check exchange rates like it's a hobby. So they constantly are checking pesos to dollar, how can I save money? We heard that you can send, like, this is interesting. So you can pay and send money, but that you only do that for work, and that you buy things in a different context. So sorry, I didn't explain that very well, but basically like the terminology you're using makes a really big difference. So pay and receive you can do for work. I might pay you for a job, but you can send money to friends. And so we actually changed the terminology in our app to kind of match the mental models and understanding that people currently had. Another thing in Argentina, there was zero concept of investing. So saving money was their form of investing. And people didn't understand Celo gold, which is our deflationary currency, and gas, like good luck. And so the key takeaway here is that people put new concepts into their existing frameworks, so kind of similar to the first one, but a step further. And so something that we're looking at is adding the local currencies into the app. So for in Tanzania, we need to have the shillings in the app, even if they're not transacting in shillings. They need to actually have the reference currency because day to day they don't buy things in dollars. The same in Argentina, the same in Colombia, kind of every market that we've looked at. In the future, Celo will support multiple currencies, so we could pay to the euro, to the shilling, to the yen. And also from a technology standpoint, we made it possible for gas to be in Celo dollars. So this is like a new innovation. So with Maker and Dai, you kind of transact in Dai, and then you pay gas in Ethereum, which from a user's experience standpoint, like how am I going to get Ethereum, and like what is going on? So with our system, everything is in Celo dollars, which makes it a lot more usable. The third is trust. So in Colombia, my guy just had a table out front of his house. He had a Venezuelan flag flying and traditional Ethereum music playing. He was always offering me a cup of coffee while we chat. And you can just kind of sense the spirit of trust and community here. And it's much harder for people to trust organizations than real people. M-Pesa was the most interesting thing, where people loved M-Pesa, but they hated Safaricom, and that was almost universal. But if you know, Safaricom owns M-Pesa. And it's because M-Pesa represented their neighbor, who operated a kind of small agent business. And they knew them, they trusted them, where Safaricom was like the person taking the fees, like the person I don't really trust. And so like the importance of like a person and a face to go to, which when you think about scale is obviously hard, but it makes a big difference when you're entering a new community with new technology. Like how do you actually scale that with people and with trust? We also found like massive distrust of banks all through Latin America and Mexico, Venezuela, and Argentina. It was like universal, maybe not surprising. And so the takeaway is people trust people, not organizations. And so how do you actually kind of create more faces? When we came back from our first trip, we completely redesigned our website. It was very illustration-based, and now it's mostly photo-based for the same reason that now they can see the people behind the technology. We also kind of amped up some of the photos in the app, keeping in mind also data usage, but trying to create a more like personable experience there. And then we're really focused on cash in, cash out solutions in market, using things like agent networks. We don't expect people to go to exchange and cash out. For most people in the world, that's not realistic, at least today. And the first one for value. Those who aren't able to buy GPs, they have robbed Wi-Fi from the UNICEF office. So this is actually in a refugee camp in Tanzania. This is a Congolese refugee who lived there for 22 years. And every time the Wi-Fi, every time it rains, the Wi-Fi goes out, not only in the camp, but actually in the local communities. In almost all the research we did, people keep their phones on low brightness to preserve battery. Charging is a huge issue. Connectivity is an issue. We just did a pilot in the Philippines, and connectivity throughout the day would also fluctuate quite a bit. And so there's all these kind of core usability challenges to overcome, no matter what market you're looking at. And so it's really important just to understand what those considerations are and design for them. Some things where we kind of, after our first few trips, really focused on building a light client. And so we have a lot of technology innovations that don't download all the headers onto the app, so that you can actually use the blockchain a lot quicker on your phone. We're also looking into offline payments as an option. So to kind of recap the 4 phases to adoption is you can kind of unlock each one of these. Eventually, over time, you get to love, where people start trusting you, and then you become like integral to their life. And if I could give you a few takeaways for ETH Berlin this weekend to kind of translate those into action. So the first is to kind of understand and also speak to the language people are using, whether that's the currency or the kind of mental models they have or the kind of everyday interaction. So spending a second trying to put yourself in their shoes and kind of think about what language they use to communicate and how can I put that in the app that I'm building or the messaging that I'm putting around it. The second one is, as much as possible, whether in the digital experience or if you're thinking about a physical experience, can you actually put a face to it? You probably trust Celo more than you did before. Either you didn't hear about us or now you know me, so maybe you trust it. So just think about how you can put a face to the experiences that you're designing. And then last is just spend some time trying to understand the usability considerations. I'm talking about emerging markets, which there's probably a lot more challenges than in Berlin, but think about whatever challenges are, and then in the earlier stages of your design and building process, kind of build some of those so that you can kind of design a technology that will actually work for the solution that you're seeking. And then I wanted to give you some tips on how to get started with research today. So how many of you are actually going to ETH Berlin? Okay, about half. So this is like the quick and dirty if you wanted to do some testing this weekend. So let's say you wanted to build a staking DApp. You could actually do this with Celo's SDK, which we launched this week. And so you wanted to think about governance and kind of how changes are made into the protocol, for example. Let me take your photos. So the first thing you could do is you could write down your assumptions. So spend 10 minutes. What do I assume about staking? And just think about, maybe you're thinking, okay, what information do stakers need to have? And so I assume that they need to know what people want to talk about. So they want to read a forum, let's say. That's like your assumption. And then you turn that assumption into a question. So I want to understand what information people are using. Talk to a few people. You could just take your question list. It's called intercepts, so just go find a few people, ask a few questions. So this is like your super lightweight form of research, but it could be cool just to ask some questions at the hackathon and kind of learn more as you're building. But if you don't want to do that, I also created an installation at ETH Berlin, and so we actually have audio from some of our interviews set up in the courtyard, and so you can actually put headphones on and kind of put yourself in different situations and hopefully learn from some different life experiences and be inspired to build for people around the world. As I mentioned, we launched the SDK this week, and so we actually have 2 workshops at ETH Berlin at 12 and 3 p.m. on Saturday. I'll also be there if you have any research questions and you want to talk about research. I love it. And then Polychain, in addition with Andreessen and Celo, launched an ecosystem fund this week. And so we actually do have funds to support long-term development in the Celo ecosystem. Lastly, we really value your time. And my Twitter is Slavich, but it's also my Telegram. And so if you have any research questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much.
Thank Vanessa for that talk.